Hey, this is attorney Elizabeth Potts-Weinstein, and today we're going to talk about, is a VA, a virtual assistant, actually an employee? So what is a VA or virtual assistant? Typically, this is someone who you think is an independent contractor who works remotely for you, virtual, and who may assist you in all kinds of different tasks. It really depends upon the particular situation. Sometimes VAs are doing admin tasks like any other assistant would do. Sometimes they're doing your website stuff. They might be doing marketing. They might be setting up ads for you. They may be writing articles for you. There's all kinds of things that a VA could be doing for your particular business. One of the big distinctions of a VA versus your regular assistant is that your VA is an independent contractor, at least you hope they are, that has their own business. So they have a virtual assistant business with multiple businesses as their clients. So why is it important for you to confirm that your VA is actually an independent contractor and is not an employee? Well, first, if the VA is an employee, you as the business, is liable for payroll taxes, for workers' comp, all that kind of stuff, for unemployment. And the state will be really unhappy if you're not paying into all those systems on behalf of an employee. Also, if they're a contractor, there's a different liability that you have for what they do versus an employee. With an employee, you're liable for almost everything they do that's not intentional. For a contractor, the liability that you have depends upon the contract that you have with that person. Another aspect to remember with hiring a VA is the law is different in different jurisdictions with what benefits you have for employees. In some places, you're legally required to give employees sick leave, that's paid sick leave. And if your VA is found to be an employee, then you were supposed to be giving them sick leave this entire time, or maybe you're supposed to be paying for their health insurance this entire time. So it's a very important issue. There are different standards for determining whether or not someone is an independent contractor versus an employee based upon who's making the decision. So in the federal government level, the IRS has a standard and then the Department of Labor has a standard. At your state level, the different agencies that regulate employment also have different standards. They're very, very similar, but not exactly the same. So considering the federal government standards, the IRS has a 3-part test to determine if someone is an employee versus a contractor. It's behavior, the financial relationship, and then the relationship overall. So behavior means, do you have control over the manner and means of how they do their work? What it comes down to is, are you giving them projects to do and it's up to them to figure out how to do it and when they're going to do it, and they're just accountable to you for the end result? Or are you managing all the tasks, all the steps of what they do? That's more like an employee versus a contractor. So, for example, let's say you have someone who's writing articles for you, and you just tell them to write these articles, and they're responsible for writing 5 articles a week or 5 articles a month. That may be different than someone who's editing video for you, and they're just responsible to have the videos be edited by a certain date, to deliver them on a certain date, which is different than someone answering the phone and you give them a script for exactly what you want them to say to your clients or customers who call, and you grade them on whether or not they're doing a good job because you record the videos and you have meetings every day to discuss those things. That's a lot more micromanagement, which is much more employee-like, than a contractor, which is typically assigned projects. I'm not saying all those categories are necessarily not employees, because it really does depend upon your jurisdiction, but it's more likely that that's going to be someone who's a contractor. The second factor is financial. So there we're looking at, how is this person compensated, and do they have a way to make a profit, to be more efficient and make a profit? So for example, you could pay someone hourly for the work that they do, which is typically how employees are paid. Or you could pay them based upon the thing that they do for you. For every video they edit for you, they get paid an X dollars amount of money. Or you can pay them on a monthly retainer basis. All these things go to whether or not someone is more likely to be an employee, which is like the hourly model, or if someone's doing things on a project basis, if they're more efficient, they make more per hour, so they have an incentive. Another aspect of financial control is expenses. Are they responsible for their own training, for their expenses, for their equipment? Maybe a contractor will have you reimbursed for expenses that are specific to that particular project, but you're not paying for them to have a laptop. Versus an employee, someone who's more like an employee, you're paying for their entire business setup. The third aspect is just the relationship overall. Do you have a contract? That's always going to be something good to have an independent contractor. Do you provide them benefits? More like an employee. So you want to think about that actual relationship. And we're not just talking about what's written in the contract, but are you doing those things that are written in the contract? The Department of Labor has a bunch more factors. They're very similar and there's a lot of overlap, but there are some specific items that are of note. One of the other factors that applies to the Department of Labor and also a lot of states is this person an integral part of your business? Are they servicing your clients and customers? Or are they doing something that isn't your normal course of business? So for example, I'm a lawyer and I could hire an outside bookkeeper to do my bookkeeping. Now that bookkeeper is an independent contractor, has all kinds of bookkeeping clients. That would be different than if I hired a bookkeeper to do bookkeeping for my clients. They're then delivering services to my clients that I charge my clients for. If I want that relationship to be a contractual relationship, I have to be very careful in how I set it up versus someone who's just doing my bookkeeping. Another aspect that's different is the permanency of the relationship. So if you hire someone to do your taxes, they may do it every year, but they're only working on it for, a couple weeks. It's not a permanent relationship, and you may hire someone different the next year. Versus someone who's an assistant who answers the phone for your business every single day, and the contract you have with them is just kind of this open-ended thing that could go on theoretically for many, many years. That looks more like an employee than someone who's just doing projects for you. Another aspect is you want to make sure that that person you hired has their own business. What I recommend to a lot of my clients is look and see, do they have a website? Do they have business cards back in when people really had business cards? Are they holding themselves out to the world via social media as wanting more clients or that they have a lot of clients? You want to look at, do they actually have a business? And when you make that determination, keep evidence of that. So print out a PDF that's a copy of their website, screenshot their social media. You want to show that they're really operating a business that is independent from your business. Looking at the state regulation of the employment relationship, first thing I want to note is it's much more likely the state is going to be upset with you than the federal government. I'm not saying the federal government doesn't ever investigate businesses, because they do, but they typically stick with larger businesses and entire industries that they're regulating. The state will come after one person who has a one-person business and hired one contractor. They micromanage things much more. So it's much more likely you'll be investigated by your state. So you need to look at the rules in your particular state and see if that calculation applies to your situation with your VA. And by the way, it's not just your state, but also the state where your VA lives or operates their business. That state is the one that's probably more likely to regulate the relationship. Typically, it comes up that a VA is dismissed and you decide to no longer have them work for you, and they file for unemployment or even workers' comp for being injured. That's when the state decides to investigate, and it's going to be your burden to prove that that VA was not an employee. So first you want to look at, does your state have any specific rules that shifts the burden? So you don't have the burden to prove that the person was actually a contractor. It's them that they have to prove that they were an employee. So for example, in Arizona, there's specific language for you to put in your contract, and you actually have to do all the stuff for you to shift that burden. Then there are many states that have language like that. In California, for example, there's just been, as of the date of this recording, a whole entire new law that was passed, AB 5, that regulates independent contractors versus employees. And a lot of the items are very similar to what I've talked about, but there are some safe harbor provisions, and there are also specific rules for specific industries. Like if you're hiring someone to do artwork for you, graphic design, you're hiring someone to be a writer. If you hire a VA in California, or if you're located in California, you need to look through that gigantic list of all the different rules for an AB 5 to see what applies to you, so you can try to take advantage of whatever provisions are possible. So bottom line, if you're hiring a VA or virtual assistant, you want to have a written contract. You want to pay them not hourly, so on a project basis. You want to have the relationship not be open-ended, ongoing forever, but have some specific time reference. You don't want to have control over every little bitty task. You want to delegate projects to them instead of micromanaging. And you want to keep evidence that they have a freestanding business that is separate from your business. Again, this is Elizabeth Potts Weinstein. If you have any questions about hiring a VA and whether or not that person is actually a contractor or an employee, feel free and go ahead and ask them below, and I'll try to point you in the right direction. Hit a thumbs up if you found this video helpful, and subscribe for more legal tips for small business owners and entrepreneurs. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.